It started with a lie wrapped in tinsel. Christmas. That dumb, overhyped holiday. The one that once meant cinnamon candles, cheap wine, and hand-scrawled cards stuffed with in-jokes and I love yous. The one that turned into her family's smug, curated Hallmark production, every sweater coordinated, every smile rehearsed. I showed up on the doorstep with 2 bags in hand. One had a few modest gifts, nothing showy, just thoughtful. The other had leftovers from our place because I knew her mom still liked my shepherd's pie, no matter how icy she was to me in person. I even wore the ridiculous reindeer sweater Claire had bought me last year. You know, to play along. But when the door opened, her mother didn't smile. She didn't greet me with fake warmth or ask me to take my shoes off on her perfect floor. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I'm sorry, you must have the wrong house." Just like that. Not a twitch in her Botoxed face. I stood there for a second, like maybe she was joking. Maybe this was her version of a prank. Maybe Claire was about to jump out from behind the tree with a camera, shrieking "Merry Christmas, babe." She didn't. Her mother just looked at me with that smooth, marble expression. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. And that's when I realized something I hadn't wanted to believe. They didn't want me there. They'd planned this. I turned around and left without a word. I don't remember walking back to the car. I remember snow hitting my face. I remember the sting in my eyes, the kind that comes from wind or betrayal. Take your pick. A few minutes later, my phone rang. Claire. I took the call, still gripping the steering wheel like it could stop the shaking in my hands. Her voice, chipper but cautious, came through the line. "Don't be mad, okay? You understand, right? We just couldn't let you in." It would have been uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? I was halfway through asking her what the hell she meant when I heard it. She forgot to hang up. The call didn't end. Her voice, further now, echoed through the car speakers like a bullet to the gut. "He still thinks that because he helps with the rent, he's automatically invited." They laughed. They laughed. That was the moment. The switch flipped. I didn't yell. I didn't call back. I didn't beg for answers or text a long paragraph she'd pretend not to read. No, I drove home, our home, and I looked around. The rent I paid had covered 75% of it. The couch? Mine. The smart TV? Mine. The coffee machine she loved so much? Guess who bought that too? By midnight, the lease was canceled. I had it in my name, something she hadn't bothered to think through when she smugly tossed out lines about equal contribution. I packed a bag and left the keys on the counter with a note that read, "Merry Christmas. Good luck paying full rent on your teacher's aide salary." I blocked her number. Her mom's. Her sister's. Every holiday hypocrite on her contact list. By morning, I had 79 missed calls. No lease. No home. Not for her. Not anymore. And me? Well, I finally slept like a baby. Because there's nothing more peaceful than the silence after the storm, especially when you drop the match. Funny thing about silence, people think it means peace. But in truth, it's just noise that hasn't found a shape yet. The apartment was empty when I returned. I stood in the doorway, staring at the living room like a crime scene investigator. And maybe it was, except the body wasn't on the floor. It had been buried under routine, behind fake smiles and silent dinners. Every corner whispered a memory. The throw blanket she insisted we needed, even though it shed like a dog in spring. The succulent she forgot to water until it turned brown and brittle, still perched on the windowsill like a monument to her laziness. The faint lavender scent of her shampoo clinging to the bathroom towels like some ghost that refused to leave. I grabbed a garbage bag. I didn't rage. I didn't shatter picture frames or light her clothes on fire in some juvenile attempt at catharsis. I cleaned, like a man taking back a space, like a soldier reclaiming fallen ground. Her side of the closet? Emptied. Her makeup drawer? Gone. The framed photo of us in front of that lighthouse in Maine? Tossed in the trash with the takeout menu she never used because she preferred home-cooked meals as long as I was the one cooking. By the time I finished, it was morning. My phone lit up again, blocked numbers. Dozens of voicemails I'd never listened to. I knew what they'd say anyway. "This is just a misunderstanding. We didn't mean it like that. It's just family tension. Don't do something you'll regret." Too late. I had already stopped regretting. You see, I didn't just walk away. I rewrote the rules. I knew Claire. I knew how she thought. She assumed I'd stew in silence. She counted on guilt, on weakness, on habit. She forgot who taught her how to budget, who showed her how to fill out rental applications, who handled the Wi-Fi, the bills, The boring stuff that keeps a home running while she posted faux inspirational quotes on Instagram about independence. She wanted the single life? Great. She could pay for it now. I contacted the landlord. The lease was in my name, solo. I told them I was moving out due to personal issues and that I wouldn't be renewing. Legally, she had no standing. No proof of residency. Not on paper. Not where it counts. She called again. Voicemail this time. Her voice was breaking. Babe, come on. Let's talk. This isn't how we fix things. I didn't mean it. You know how my mom is. I was just trying to keep the peace. Please. I'm at the apartment. Why is the key not working? Right. I forgot to mention, I changed the locks. Not out of spite. Out of principle. That's what she never understood. It was never about the money. It was about the respect. The kind of respect you give the person who helps carry your load, even when you're ungrateful. The kind of respect that says, you matter. You count. But to her, I was a utility. I made life easier. Until I didn't. The last thing I did before I left was scribble a note and slide it under the door. It said, you lied. You laughed. You lost. I drove out of town that afternoon. Just me, a duffel bag, and the weight finally off my chest. I wasn't sure where I was headed yet, but one thing was certain. I would never be disposable again. They say hindsight is 20/20ths. What they don't tell you is how ugly the truth looks once your eyes finally adjust. On the road out of town, with nothing but the hum of tires and a half-eaten convenience store sandwich keeping me company, I started replaying every scene. Not the big moments, no. Betrayal never lives in the obvious. It survives in the mundane. That time I offered to pick up her mother's birthday cake, and she told me, it's fine. You're not really part of that tradition. That time she corrected me in front of her friends when I called her my wife, saying, well, fiancé technically. I haven't signed my life away yet. Then she laughed. Everyone laughed. I didn't. I remember her phone habits changing. Lock screen notifications off. Battery saving mode, she claimed. Because apparently conserving 3% was worth raising 100 questions. I remember her using that same excuse for disappearing into the kitchen during calls, bad reception. Even though we had full bars and a Wi-Fi router 10 feet from the damn table. I remember the sudden girls' nights that somehow involved makeup, high heels, and her putting on perfume like she was headed to the Met Gala. But no selfies, no tags, no stories, not even a boomerang of their drinks. Odd, considering she once posted a pic of her lunch salad with the caption, "Leave me alone, leaf fluttering in wind," like she was trying out for a BuzzFeed internship. But the most damning thing I remember was how she started treating me. Like I was beige. A background prop in her curated life. If I didn't text, she wouldn't notice. If I didn't cook, she'd order in. If I didn't touch her, she'd roll over and scroll. She stopped needing me long before she stopped pretending. That realization hurt more than the wrong house line. More than the voicemail. She had quietly amputated me from her life. Just hadn't bothered to stitch up the wound yet. I pulled into a motel that smelled like disinfectant and wet carpet. But it was cheap and anonymous. Two things I craved more than comfort right then. I collapsed on the bed, fully clothed, the day's bitterness pooling in my bones like acid. I opened my phone. Social media. Her page was private now. Interesting. She had archived every post with me in it. Like I never existed. I checked her mother's page. Claire was there, arms wrapped around her mom, both wearing matching Christmas pajamas by the fireplace. The caption? Family is everything. Funny. When I offered to spend Christmas helping her dad fix that busted garage door he never had time for, she said, that's not really what the holiday is about. No. Apparently, it was about lies, exclusion, and matching Target outfits for the gram. I tossed the phone onto the nightstand and stared at the ceiling. For a minute, just a minute, I let myself feel it, the hollow, the grief. Not over her. Not really. But over the version of myself I had bent into knots to be worthy of her. I gave up overtime shifts so we'd have dinner together. I let her take the bigger closet. I tolerated her mother's condescension and bit my tongue through every joke about how lucky I was to have Claire. But here's the rub. Lucky men don't sleep alone in discount motels 2 days before Christmas, rethinking their entire relationship while their ex-fiancé clinks wine glasses with the same people who threw him out like a dog in the snow. No, this wasn't luck. This was a lesson. And lessons? I don't forget those. I finally slept that night, on a squeaky mattress, under a blanket that smelled like bleach and apathy. And when I woke up, I felt something different. Not anger, not sorrow, resolve. This wasn't going to end with her sobbing on my voicemail and me fading quietly into some sad statistic. She wanted to write me out of the story? Fine. I'd write a new one. And this time, I'd be the main character. They don't warn you about the emotional hangover of betrayal. Not the weeping, pitiful kind. That's for movies and melodrama. No, I'm talking about the cold, lucid sort. The morning after clarity. When your heart stops pleading and your brain finally shows up with a clipboard, a red pen, and a list of everything you ignored while trying to be the good guy. That morning, I didn't scroll. I didn't check my voicemails. I didn't even replay the memory of her mom's voice saying, "Wrong house." Like I was some delivery guy who brought the wrong kind of pie. I just sat in the motel chair, one boot on, one sock off, staring at the window while the morning sun leaked through dusty blinds. And I thought, what now? I wasn't homeless, not really. I had money. My name was on more than just that lease. I had options. What I didn't have was patience for anyone trying to play me again. So I started making calls. First to my bank, then my credit cards, then the one lawyer I knew who owed me a favor for helping renovate his vacation home 2 years back. By noon, I'd locked down everything Claire ever touched. Our shared accounts? Cleared. Hers had been decorative anyway, like the fruit bowl on the kitchen table, nice to look at, but empty. The utilities under my name? Cancelled. Let her enjoy candlelight dinners without me. Her Amazon account? Oh yeah, she used mine. Password changed. Membership canceled. Let's see how long she lasts without next day shipping on overpriced facial serums. I was done being convenient. But it wasn't just about cutting her off. It was about recentering myself. Step 1, get my own place. 1 bedroom. No frills, no distractions. I didn't need square footage. I needed solitude. Found a short-term rental on the other side of town. Furnished, neutral, quiet. Perfect for disappearing without actually vanishing. Step 2, delete the digital Claire. Gone from my photos. Gone from my playlists. No more Our Song, popping up at red lights like a knife to the chest. Gone from my GPS history, because the last place I needed to see was the boutique where I used to wait outside holding her purse while she shopped for shoes to impress clients. Clients named Evan, apparently. Step 3, reclaim time. I started waking up early again. Hitting the gym like I used to before compromise became a personality trait. I meal prepped, cleaned, journaled. Yeah, I journaled. Not the Dear Diary kind. More like war logs. Notes. Observations. Dates. Patterns. Because once you've been lied to that well, you develop a taste for precision. And all the while, the messages kept coming. First it was Claire. Then her mom. Then friends I hadn't heard from in months suddenly remembering I existed. Claire, can we just talk? You didn't even give me a chance to explain. Explain what? That I wasn't good enough to walk through the front door of a house I used to help pay for? Claire's mom. This is all a misunderstanding. Family holidays are complicated. Yeah, so is eviction. How's that working out? Her best friend, Jessica, the one who always called me too intense. I think Claire's really hurting. She didn't mean for it to get this far. Tell that to the bottle of champagne she popped in those Christmas photos. Didn't exactly look like a woman in mourning. They wanted the man they could ignore. The man they could use. The man who would take the disrespect, internalize it, and still hold the door for them the next day. That man was gone. In his place, someone who wasn't playing a part anymore. Because when they left me outside in the cold, they thought I'd freeze. What they didn't realize was I build best in winter. I kept a list. Not out of bitterness. Not even out of spite. But because clarity demands documentation. There's something sacred about putting pen to paper when your whole life's been digital facades and passive-aggressive texts. So I wrote it all down. Date of betrayal, December 24th. Time, approximate, 6:08 p.m. Event, Claire's mother answers the door. Utters phrase. I'm sorry, you must have the wrong house. Impact, psychological rupture. Domestic severance. Immediate disassociation. It sounds cold, I know. Like an insurance report. But that's the thing about betrayal. It numbs you in waves. 1 minute, you're grieving your future. The next, you're itemizing your past like an accountant balancing ledgers on a shipwreck. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I listed. The name of the locksmith who changed our locks, Tony. Veteran. Good work, fast. The lawyer who drafted a motion to have Claire removed from any residual utilities, Fletcher. Expensive. but thorough. The cafe where she first told me she loved how stable I was now renamed in my mind as the setup. The quarter mom always said, "You can't polish a stone into a diamond if it comes from cheap soil." That one stuck with me. I never responded to it. Just smiled, like a good son-in-law should. Now I realize, I was the one doing the polishing. I was the one putting in the time, the labor, the sacrifice. She was just the sparkle, until the lights came on and the glass started to crack. Back in my new place, the days started to blur into a rhythm I hadn't known I missed. Early mornings. Coffee without commentary. Silence without tension. You wouldn't believe how good it feels to not walk on eggshells in your own kitchen. I started reading again, actual books, not articles Claire would send with subject lines like, "You need to stop mansplaining economics, LOL." I read Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, even scribbled down a few of their quotes in my new journal, the one I titled, Lessons Learned in the Wreckage. One quote hit hard. "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." Marcus Aurelius. Well, Marcus, truth did harm me, but only because I didn't seek it soon enough. And now? Now I wasn't just seeking it, I was tracing it. I started noticing things I never did before. In old messages. In bank statements. In her calendar invites. In the way she always said, "I'm just tired," after getting off late-night Zoom calls with someone she claimed was a brand consultant named Andy. Andy doesn't send rose emojis at midnight. Andy doesn't Venmo her money with "thanks for the therapy clinking glasses" in the memo. Andy, I would later find out, was short for Andrea. And suddenly the emotional math made sense. The disinterest. The distance. The Christmas exile. They didn't just want me out of the holiday. They wanted me out of the narrative. But stories don't erase themselves. Not when the original author is still holding the pen. Let Claire play her games. Let Andrea think she upgraded. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I wasn't reacting. I was rebuilding, and this time, every nail, every bolt, every blueprint had purpose. Because here's what no one tells you about betrayal. It isn't the end of your life. It's the start of the one you were meant to live. It's amazing what people leave open when they think you've checked out. Passwords. Routines. Old habits they never bothered to change, because they never thought you'd stop being the doormat they wiped their feet on while kissing someone else behind closed doors. Claire never logged out of our shared laptop. The one I bought her 2 Christmases ago. Ironically, the same day she gave me a book titled, How to Communicate Better for Couples. She said it was a joke. I said thank you. I should have read it. That laptop was a treasure chest of oversight. Her email? Wide open. Calendar? Synced. Photo uploads? Automatic. And buried in the noise, like landmines waiting for boots, were names. Andrea B. A frequent flyer in Claire's inbox. Travel reservations. Dinner reservations. A few messages from her branding agency that included phrases like, "Tonight was amazing and can't believe I ever thought she was the problem." She, not he. Claire had rewritten her story. I wasn't the absentee partner anymore. I was the oppressor. The nice guy who held her back. The man who dared expect a little damn loyalty in return for 3 years of partnership and a paid-off apartment. Andrea wasn't some secret. Not anymore. She was a feature of Claire's new life. A reward, maybe. A prize for enduring me. That's how Claire painted it in her journal entries. Yes, she kept a journal. A digital one, of course. Claire always had that aesthetic wellness girl thing going. Gratitude logs. Mooncycle notes. Manifestation boards. And in the middle of it all, I feel lighter with Andrea. Seen. Nate always made me feel like a job. Like I was something to maintain. Andrea just gets me. Gets you? Andrea didn't hold your hair while you sobbed over losing that job in 2019. Andrea didn't rub your back through food poisoning or take your car for oil changes because you couldn't be bothered. Andrea didn't hold your hand in the ER when your sister overdosed and you blamed yourself. But sure, Andrea gets you. I screenshotted everything. Not to blackmail. Not to confront. But to remember. To anchor myself in reality when the inevitable apology tour would start. And no, it did. It began with a text I didn't reply to. Then a voicemail. Then another. Then Claire's best friend, Jessica, just checking in. Sounding like a parole officer pretending to be a friend. Then her mom. Again. I stayed silent. Because silence unnerves them more than shouting ever could. But I wasn't idle. I started showing up in places I hadn't in months. Old friends. Old circles. Connections I'd put aside for us. "You look different," one of them said. I just smiled. Because I was different. There's something powerful about being underestimated. It lets you move like fog, unnoticed, untouchable, until they wake up soaked in consequence. I didn't respond to Claire until exactly 1 week later. I sent her a single message. You were right. I did make things feel like a job. That's what happens when someone stops being your partner and becomes your liability. She didn't respond, but I know she read it. Because 2 minutes later, Andrea blocked me on Instagram. Guilt's a hell of a mirror. The difference is, some of us face it. Some just try to break it. They thought silence meant surrender. That I'd vanish into some bachelor cave, grow a beard, buy a motorcycle, and cry into craft beer while watching our wedding slideshow on repeat. They expected the cliché. They didn't get it. What they got instead was a man who refused to grieve loudly, who moved without making noise, who healed with purpose, not performance. I posted nothing. Not a single passive-aggressive quote. Not a screenshot. Not a cryptic lyric. Nothing for them to dissect in their group chats like amateur sleuths. And that's what made them unravel. Because here's the truth they don't want you to know. The cheater needs to be chased. They need to be important. They need you to scream, to beg, to play the villain they imagined you as. They need you to be the monster that justifies the affair. When you deny them that, you become their obsession. Claire couldn't stand the quiet. She started liking my old photos. Photos she used to hate. Photos she once called brooding or embarrassingly low quality. She even liked the one from that fishing trip with my dad, the same trip she said was a waste of a weekend. Then I saw it. Andrea viewed my story. A story that had nothing to do with them. Just a black and white shot of a coffee cup and a quote by Hemingway. The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them and see what happens. I didn't tag anyone. Didn't say a word. But guilt has a frequency. And they were tuned in. 2 days later, Claire texted me. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve any of it. I left it on read. The next day, I saw her at the co-op. She didn't notice me at first, too busy scanning for oat milk and looking like she hadn't slept in days. I stayed a few steps behind. She reached for the almond butter and dropped her phone. I watched it clatter to the floor, screen up. A message preview lit up. Andrea, we need to talk. I feel like you're not being honest with me lately. I didn't smirk. Didn't gloat. I just picked up a carton of eggs and walked away. Because the moment you stop needing revenge, that's when it starts working all by itself. That night, I got dinner with an old friend. No intentions. No plans. Just real conversation with someone who remembered who I was before I lost myself in someone else's orbit. She asked, do you ever think about forgiving her? I took a sip of my drink. Forgiveness is for people who made a mistake, I said. What she did, that was a strategy. Because that's what no one talks about. Betrayal isn't an accident. It's a plan. It's a decision, layered, deliberate, rehearsed behind your back until it debuts in your face. Claire didn't cheat because she was confused. She cheated because she calculated I wouldn't leave. She miscalculated. The hardest part about rebuilding isn't the labor. It's the ghosts. The ones that knock late at night. The ones that still know your birthday, your coffee order, your scars. The ones that helped you build the house, then burned it down while smiling for pictures. Claire's name popped up on my phone again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was an email. The subject line read, "Can we please talk?" She'd written 5 paragraphs. Apologies. Regrets. Reminders. She mentioned the trip to Asheville. The time I stayed up all night to finish her grad school application. How I held her mother's hand in the hospital when her father had that scare. She said she didn't realize what she had until it was gone. That Andrea wasn't what she thought she was. That she felt tricked. The irony was so thick it could have drowned an honest man. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because she didn't deserve them. I'd spent years handing Claire all the right words. And what did she do? She twisted them into weapons, then blamed me when they drew blood. I left the email sitting there, marked unread. Let her wonder if I saw it. Let it eat her. Then the second email came. Subject, please. No message. Just an attachment. A picture of us. The one from the cabin. Snow in our hair. Firelight in her eyes. The photo she once called too unflattering to frame. Suddenly, it was her evidence. Of what, though? That we had a moment? Moments mean nothing when the same mouth that whispered, "I love you," also whispered someone else's name weeks later. Still, I kept the photo. Not because I missed her, but because I needed a reminder. Even good memories can become lies in disguise. Meanwhile, the world moved on. So did I. I started putting time into things I'd put off. Took that photography class I kept pushing to next year. Volunteered at a local shelter. Grabbed beers with guys who drifted out of my orbit while I was busy orbiting her. One night, after grabbing a burger at a spot we used to love, I ran into Andrea. She looked surprised. I didn't. She wore guilt like it was a fashion choice. Not too loud. Just enough to let you know she was trying. Her voice was softer than I remembered. Hey, she said. Didn't expect to see you. Life's full of surprises, I replied, sipping my drink. There was a pause. Claire's not doing great. I raised an eyebrow. She said you won't respond. That you just cut her off. I shrugged. I learned that sometimes closure is just another door they want to walk through when they're done wrecking the house. Andrea nodded, biting her lip. She's not the person I thought she was either. No, I said. But she is exactly the person I always knew she could be. And with that, I stood up. Left my half-finished drink on the bar. Because I didn't need to finish that conversation. I'd already finished the chapter. It started with a message from her cousin, Emily. The only one in that family who ever looked me in the eye when I talked. The only one who didn't smile with her mouth while sneering with her eyes. We hadn't spoken since the breakup. Claire had made sure of that. Burned bridges in advance so no one could cross back over. But then, one morning, her name showed up in my inbox. Hey, this might be out of line, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. At first, I thought it was bait. Some elaborate play. Some sympathy trap. But then she sent another message. The way they treated you? At Christmas? That wasn't about family boundaries. It was a performance. I told Claire I didn't want any part of it. And she said I could stay home if I had such a problem with it. So I did. I stared at the screen for a long while. I hadn't known that. Claire made it sound like the whole family agreed I was a stress trigger. That I disrupted the flow of the evening. Turns out, not everyone was reading from her script. Emily went on. She told everyone you'd become emotionally unstable. Said you were controlling. That you were toxic and probably cheating anyway. I believed her for a while. Until I saw the pictures from that night. You showing up with gifts. Food. Wearing that stupid reindeer sweater. That stung a bit. It was a stupid sweater. Anyway, I just wanted to say, I think I was wrong. And if there's ever anything you need to clear your name, I'll say what I saw. I'll say what I know. I didn't need her to say anything. Not anymore. But it meant something that she offered. It meant the truth wasn't mine alone to carry. Later that night, I got another message. This one from Claire's old roommate, Kim. We hadn't talked in years. She always had Claire's back, even when Claire didn't have hers. You dodged a bullet. That was all it said. But it carried weight. The kind of weight that comes from someone who's finally seen the cracks behind the smile. Claire used to collect people. She kept them close, charmed them, dazzled them, and then quietly controlled the narrative. She was the victim in every story. The misunderstood hero. The girl who just needed support. But now, the threads were fraying. Andrea had backed off. That much was clear. Her Instagram went dark. Claire stopped tagging her in anything. And suddenly, the same woman who had tried to erase me was posting vague stories about healing, mistakes, and taking time to grow. A week ago, I might have scoffed. Now, I didn't even flinch. Because that wasn't my story anymore. What was my story? Well, that was starting to write itself. Work was good. Better than good, actually. With Claire out of the picture, I had time to focus, time to build again. New contract. A promotion. Even started mentoring a guy at the firm who reminded me of myself 10 years ago. Idealistic, a little too nice, but sharp. The kind of guy who hadn't yet been gutted by betrayal. I didn't tell him my story. I just taught him how to see people a little clearer. How to read the silences between the sentences. How to trust without being blind. Because pain makes you precise. And precision? That's power. I still hadn't responded to Claire's emails. Not because I hadn't crafted replies in my head, but because she didn't deserve closure delivered. She deserved silence. Silence speaks louder when it's earned. The thing about lies is they come with interest. You don't just pay for the damage once. You pay every time the truth walks into a room and doesn't flinch. And lately, I've been walking into a lot of rooms. Not loud, not angry, just present. And my presence? That's what rattled Claire most. I didn't reach out. I didn't retaliate. I just kept living, building, thriving. And she? She unraveled. It started small, Emily told me. She'd heard from one of Claire's friends that Andrea was seeing someone new. Apparently, Claire found out through a tagged photo. One of those quiet betrayals, public, Unavoidable, irreversible. Like the universe wanted her to taste her own medicine. Suddenly, Claire started showing up where I used to go. The same coffee shop. The bookstore I'd introduced her to. Even that dog park, where we used to watch golden retrievers tackle toddlers like linebackers. I saw her once from across the street. She didn't look at me, but I know she saw me. And the look on her face? It wasn't hate. It wasn't even guilt. It was something worse. Regret. Because regret doesn't beg for forgiveness. It begs for rewind. And life doesn't have that button. Then came the text. Can we at least have one conversation? Not to fix anything. Just to say the things that never got said. It sat there. Read. Not replied. Then another. You were the only person who ever actually saw me. And I destroyed that. I know. No reply. Then. I thought I'd feel free. But all I feel is stupid. You were always the one who kept everything together. And I made fun of that. Of you. Still no reply. Because here's the thing. Her acknowledgement didn't move me. It just confirmed what I already knew. That she'd built her escape plan like a fairy tale, expecting applause. And instead, she got exactly what she deserved. Silence. The world she traded me for, full of glitter and ego and curated healing, had no foundation. It crumbled the moment the audience stopped clapping. Meanwhile, I was doing fine. Actually, more than fine. I started traveling again. Just small trips. Places I used to dream of seeing before I became a support system. And every time I stood in a new place, new city, new skyline, new sunlight, I realized something. Claire never loved me. She loved what I did for her. She loved the certainty, the stability, the consistency of being someone's center. But me? I wasn't her partner. I was her platform. And when she thought she found something shinier, she jumped. No parachute. No plan. Just faith that I'd still be there at the bottom. Well, she jumped. And this time, I wasn't there to catch her. She showed up. Unannounced. Uninvited. Unwelcome. It was a Thursday. Cold. Gray sky. The kind of day that feels like it's holding its breath. I'd just gotten home from a client meeting. Kicked off my boots. Poured a drink. Put on some old blues and sat down to breathe. That's when the knock came. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just persistent. I opened the door halfway. And there she was. Claire. No makeup. What hair? Oversized hoodie she probably thought I'd recognize. Holding a Tupperware container like this was 2019 and we were still playing house. For a second, I said nothing. Because honestly, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt nothing. And that nothing is what rattled her most. Hi, she said. I nodded. Didn't open the door any wider. I made you something. I was in the area and thought. I cut her off. Calm. Cold. Unapologetic. Why are you here? She blinked. I just thought maybe we could talk. You thought wrong. Her lips parted like she had a speech rehearsed. She probably did, but I wasn't going to give her a stage. You don't have to forgive me, she said quickly. I know I don't deserve that. I keep thinking about everything. What I said. What I did. How I laughed on the phone like you were some inconvenience. Like I was a tenant, I said, voice flat. She winced. That was wrong, she whispered. You didn't deserve that. You're right. She seemed surprised I agreed so easily. Like she expected me to soften. To inch open the door. To let her nostalgia become leverage. But I didn't move. You said once that I was your home, she said. And I threw that away. I nodded again. You did. I don't expect things to go back. She looked down, then back up. I miss you. Not the comfort. Not the rent. You. I stared at her. Then said, what's her name? Claire flinched. You want to talk about honesty? I asked. Let's talk. Andrea. You made your choice. You gambled. You lied. And you laughed while doing it. I know. No. You remember. That's different. She looked like she wanted to cry. But I'd seen that act before. I let the silence stretch until it broke her. Please, she said. Can we just sit down for 5 minutes? You've had 5 years, I said, my voice like frost. And you spent them sculpting a life where I was the fool. She reached out. I stepped back. That was the moment her face cracked. The realization. The shift. She thought I was still in love with her sadness. She thought she could weaponize her regret like she once weaponized her charm. But she forgot something. I didn't lose her. She lost me. And there's no map for getting back to a man who's done. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently. Because she wasn't worth the drama. She stood there for a few seconds, then walked away. I watched through the peephole as she paused at the stairs, wiped her eyes, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Didn't need to, because it was too late. You'd be surprised how loud peace can be. After months of noise, emotional static, unanswered calls, the occasional knock on my front door laced with guilt, I finally hit silence. And this time, it wasn't emptiness. It was presence. The absence of Claire, of her mother's smug judgment, of Andrea's curated flattery. That wasn't a void. It was space. And I filled it. Not with revenge. With rebirth. I changed the locks. Again. Not because she'd tried to come back a second time. She hadn't. But because it felt right. Like a final seal. A physical reminder that not every door deserves to stay connected to the key. I swapped out furniture. Got rid of the couch she picked out because it looked good in selfies. I bought one that felt like me. Strong. Solid. Simple. No frills. No pretenders. I painted the walls. Not metaphorically, actually painted them. Rolled a deep navy across the bland eggshell Claire had insisted on. Said it made the room feel lighter. Of course, everything had to feel a certain way with her. Perception over principle. Not anymore. This place was mine now, and I didn't decorate it for anyone's approval. I bought a new bed. Slept dead center in it. No cold side. No empty space. Just me. Whole. Present. Free. I started taking long walks again. Not the kind you take to cool down after a fight. The kind where you wander just to breathe. Where you end up somewhere new without trying. Where no one's texting you, "Where are you?" with that passive-aggressive tone disguised as worry. I took up boxing. Not to hit. To focus. The bag doesn't lie. It doesn't cheat. It doesn't accidentally forget to hang up. It just takes what you give it and gives it back, one strike at a time. The first time I threw a real punch, I thought of that voicemail. Claire laughing. He still thinks because he helps with the rent, he's automatically invited. Crack. That was for the man I used to be. The one who bent over backwards just to be tolerated. Crack. That was for the woman who mistook my kindness for weakness. Crack. And that was for me. Not the old me. The next me. People started noticing. At work. In the mirror. Even in passing glances at the store. "You look different," someone said. I did. Because grief has weight, but so does self-respect. And when you drop the former, the latter builds fast. I wasn't bitter. I was better. Not in spite of her. Because of what she taught me. She taught me that love without loyalty is just manipulation and makeup. That partnership without respect is a cage with nice furniture. That not everyone who says, "I choose you," actually means it. And I'll never forget that lesson. Because it cost me everything. And gave me more. It started with a compliment I wasn't expecting. "You have a presence," she said. I was halfway through a black coffee at a local bookstore cafe. One of those quiet spots that doesn't try too hard. No Wi-Fi. No gimmicks. Just good light and better silence. She sat across the room, reading a hardcover. No filters. No pretentious air. Just real. We'd exchanged a glance. Nothing flirty. Just human. And then she walked over. Introduced herself. Name was Riley. Architect. Quick wit, slower smile. Wore confidence like it wasn't for sale. "You used to shrink yourself," she said, not as an insult, but as an observation. "I've seen you here a few times. Now, you look like you fit your own skin." I didn't know what to say, because for the first time in a long time she was right. I wasn't making myself smaller anymore. I wasn't adjusting my words to keep the peace. I wasn't waiting to be granted permission to exist. I had presence. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I had finally stopped apologizing for who I was. We talked for an hour that felt like 10 minutes. She asked questions no one else had bothered to ask in years. Not about where I worked or what kind of car I drove. But, what makes you calm? What made you start over? What did you learn when she left? And I told her. Not all of it. Not the names. Not the ugliest details. But enough. She didn't flinch. She just nodded like someone who knew what it was to be torn down and rebuilt right. When we said goodbye, she didn't ask for my number. She handed me hers. Said, "You're someone who's already done the hard work. That's rare. Call me if you want to keep building." Then she walked out the door. No games. No drama. No emotional landmines wrapped in perfume. Just clarity. I didn't call her that night. I sat with the card. Sat with myself. And smiled. Not because I was excited, but because I finally wasn't afraid. That night, I got a text from Emily, Claire's cousin. Apparently Claire saw me through the bookstore window. Apparently, she saw Riley hand me her number. Apparently, she didn't handle it well. She left the wine tasting early, Emily wrote. Tried to act like she was fine, but she looked like she swallowed broken glass. I didn't respond, because that wasn't my business anymore. Let her sit with it. Let her see that life moved on. And not just moved on, but got better without her. Because sometimes the only justice you need is you. Unapologetic, unbothered, undeniably whole. It wasn't a comeback, because I hadn't left. I'd been there the whole time, working, building, steady. But now, the noise was gone. The anchor was cut. And what was left behind wasn't a new version of me. It was the original. The one she tried to downplay. The one she rebranded as too intense, too serious, too responsible. Funny how they call you boring when you don't need constant chaos to feel alive. Now, I walked different. I spoke less, but people leaned in more. At work, I got promoted without even asking. My supervisor said, "You've stepped into something." Quiet confidence. Keep it. At the gym, guys started asking me about my routine. I told them the truth. I just stopped dragging dead weight. And in social circles, places I used to dread because she always made me feel like I didn't belong, people now sought me out. Riley and I did meet again. Coffee. Then dinner. We didn't rush anything. No declarations. No urgency. Just presence. We talked about growth. About failure. About the difference between moving on and moving forward. And she said something that stuck with me. It's not that you survived it. It's that you made art from it. She saw it. Not just the recovery, but the rebirth. Then one night, something poetic happened. A friend of mine hosted a small gathering, New Year, new energy. Nothing big. Just real people, real conversations. I was standing by the fire pit, sipping bourbon, when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned, and there she was. Claire's sister. Jessica. The same Jessica who once told me, "You're not really Claire's type, you know. You're a bit routine." I nodded. "Didn't expect to see you here." She gave a tight smile. "Didn't expect to want to be here." She paused, fidgeted with her bracelet. "I just wanted to say, I was wrong about you." We all were. I sipped my drink. Said nothing. She kept going. "Claire's been a mess. She won't say it, but I know. Andrea's gone. The apartment's a wreck. She keeps talking about how she lost the only person who actually showed up." I raised an eyebrow. "That's supposed to mean something to me?" She shook her head. "No, I guess not. I just figured. You should know." "I do know," I said. "And I knew it before she did." Jessica looked down. "She really thought you'd wait for her." "That's the thing," I said, setting my glass down. "She thought I was the backup plan. She never realized I was the blueprint." And I walked away. Not out of pride. Out of peace. Because once you stop explaining your worth to people who benefited from pretending not to see it, you don't need closure. You become the closed door. I didn't hear her name anymore. Not from friends. Not from mutuals. Not even from her family. It was like the universe had quietly archived her, filed her away in that drawer labeled, "Lessons you only have to learn once." And me? I was light. Not lighter in the Instagram influencer, burn sage and drink kale smoothies kind of way. Lighter because the weight I used to carry, her disappointment, her drama, her delicate ego was gone. I no longer edited myself. No longer filtered my thoughts so they wouldn't bruise her self-image. I just was. And that scared people like her. Because they thrive in emotional leverage, subtle manipulation dressed as misunderstanding. They can't control what they can't predict. And me? I was done being predictable. Riley and I started spending more time together. Not out of need. Out of want. She wasn't interested in fixing me. She liked that I'd already done the work. She asked once, "What would you do if Claire showed up at your door tomorrow?" I laughed. Not a cruel laugh. Just the kind that comes when you know your answer instantly. I'd offer her directions. To where? To anywhere that isn't here. Riley smiled. Good. Because the version of you she left behind? He was still hoping. But the man I'm looking at? She leaned in. He's done waiting. That weekend, we went hiking. First time I'd touched a trail in years. Somewhere halfway up the ridge, we stopped to take in the view. Miles of trees. Sky so wide it felt like you could fall into it. And there I was, standing in the open, no text messages buzzing, no tension coiling in my gut from the fear of saying the wrong thing to the wrong woman who would weaponize my truth. Just quiet. Just me. And for once, I didn't feel like a man who had been left. I felt like the one who walked away on purpose, with dignity, and without the need for a single damn spotlight. When we came back into town, I had 2 missed calls. One was from my landlord. The other? A blocked number. The voicemail was short. Claire, I saw you today. With her. You looked happy. I don't know what I expected. I just never imagined I'd be watching you walk away from someone else's side. I miss you. She paused, then added, I guess I thought you'd always be just a little bit mine. That line stuck with me. Not because it hurt. Because it didn't. It just confirmed what I always knew deep down. She never wanted me to be free. She just wanted to know I'd always be available. A backup plan with a pulse. A safety net with a paycheck. But I have become something far more dangerous to people like her. Unreachable. It happened on a Sunday. Late afternoon. That quiet part of the weekend where most people try to salvage peace before Monday hits. I was at a small local market. Riley and I had just picked out some sourdough and fresh basil for dinner. She made a joke about me becoming domesticated. I replied that I'd always been capable. It just took the right kind of peace to make it visible. That's when I saw her. Claire. Standing at the end of the aisle. Holding a box of overpriced biscotti she probably didn't even want. She wasn't made up. No styled curls. No curated outfit. Just Claire. The real one. The one who used to complain about how boring grocery shopping was. The one who told me, once, that she hated slow domestic errands because they made her feel trapped. No? She looked trapped in her own skin. She caught my eye. Froze. I didn't stop. I didn't flinch. I nodded once, politely. And then I turned back to Riley, who was telling me about the first meal she ever botched in culinary school. I heard Claire's footsteps as she walked past. Heard her pause just behind me. Heard her breathing shift like she wanted to say something. But I didn't turn around. That moment wasn't hers. It was mine. Later that evening, she tried again. This time, through an email. Subject, closure. As if that word was a magic key. She wrote, Seeing you today was harder than I thought. You looked different. Lighter. I don't know how to explain it, but I finally get it. I didn't just lose you. I lost the only version of myself that ever felt safe. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For all of it. You were right. About everything. About me. I hope you find what you were always trying to build. And I hope it's nothing like me. For a second, I sat with those words. Not out of sentiment, but out of confirmation. It was over. Not emotionally. Not legally. Not socially. Cosmically. Because what she wanted wasn't closure. She wanted relief from the shame. She wanted a reply that would ease the sting. Make her feel like it hadn't all been so ugly. So final. But there's something every betrayer has to learn. Sometimes, you don't get a clean ending. Sometimes, the person you left doesn't wait by the door. Sometimes, they build a better one. And they walk through it with someone who didn't need to be convinced of their worth. I didn't reply. Didn't draft a single word. Just hit archive. And walked back into the kitchen, where Riley was chopping basil with one of those focused expressions that said she was fully in the moment, and had no idea I just buried a ghost in my inbox. Smells like something's cooking, I said. She looked up, smiled, and replied, Yeah, something good. And for the first time in years, I believed that. Because what was cooking was mine. Not borrowed. Not broken. Not betrayed. Just real. It started with a message from a podcast host. Subject, we'd love to have you on to talk about rebuilding after betrayal. At first, I almost ignored it. Thought it was spam. Thought maybe someone from Claire's orbit was trying to sneak back in under a new name. But the host was legit. I'd listened to her show before. One of those no-nonsense, sharp-witted women who cuts through therapy cliches like a scalpel. She said she'd read a piece I posted on Medium a few months back. An essay I wrote late one night, half for myself, half to exorcise the ghosts. I titled it, When the Foundation Cracks, Rebuild in Steel. I didn't think anyone would read it. Turns out, everyone did. It got picked up by a men's wellness group, then by a relationship recovery platform, then by a professional development site. Men and women reached out. Strangers. Messages like, This made me get off the floor after my wife walked out. I stopped blaming myself after reading this. Thank you. I've never seen someone explain quiet betrayal so clearly. You put words to what I lived. And that's when I realized this wasn't just my story. It was ours. Every man who gave until it broke him. Every partner who got left behind for someone shinier. Every decent soul who was made to feel boring for being dependable. We'd all been there. But not all of us made it out the same. Some men stayed bitter. Some shrank. Some rebuilt their ex on a pedestal of pity and chased ghosts for years. But I turned the blueprint of betrayal into a blueprint for rebuilding. Riley pushed me to accept the podcast invitation. She said, "You've got the scars and the language. That's rare." So I went, sat across from a microphone and told the truth, not the polished, social media-friendly version. The real version. Told them about the day I showed up for Christmas and her mother said, "You must have the wrong house." Told them about the voicemail, the laughter, the door that slammed in my face while they toasted Prosecco and planned my exit. And then I told them what happened next. How I didn't burn the house down. I tore it down and rebuilt something better in its place. By the time the episode aired, my inbox was flooded. But what mattered most wasn't the attention. It was the freedom. The full-circle moment of knowing my worst day had become someone else's survival guide. Even Claire's cousin Emily messaged me again. "Just listened. You have no idea how many people needed to hear that." I did. Because I used to be one of them. One night, months later, Riley and I were cooking again. She was humming something under her breath, barefoot, hair tied up, face soft with focus. She said, "You ever think about what would have happened if she hadn't kicked you out?" I looked at her, slow. "No," I said, "because if she hadn't." I gestured around the kitchen. To her. To the life I had now. This wouldn't exist.